what broke the Shadowlands, right? Now, we should at least first establish, just so that everyone is on the same page, the Arbiter going down is what broke the Shadowlands. There is no double think here, there is no double speak here. There is no, the Arbiter going down was just one part of it, and then everything else. No. The Arbiter going down is the thing that broke the Shadowlands. Now we have to decide what it is that brought down the Shadowlands. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to point out before we even get there. Before we even get to that discussion, there is a couple of things that needs to be pointed out.
For uncounted eons, the Shadowlands was in perfect order.
That was the first thing that bugged the living fuck out of me. For uncounted eons, the Shadowlands was in perfect order. See, the reason this bugged me is the only things we know of that is seemingly in perfect order, right, is the Titans. The only things that search for perfect order is the Titans. We've seen this before, right? They will upend a system. They will completely overthrow a system if it destroys the order of things. I'll go so far as to give you guys a speculation theory that I'm working on right now. I believe that the multiple timelines that we have in the universe, remember we are told that there are countless timelines, I believe that that's the doing of Aman'Thul. I think that Aman'Thul broke the timelines, and the reason he broke the timelines is it's easier to maintain control on the primary timeline when you have the ability to look at the other timelines, look at what's going wrong, and make sure that you counteract that preemptively. So look, for example, at something like Alternative Draenor, where the light went completely out of control. The Titans could look at that, see how that happened, and ensure that it can't happen on the primary timeline, which we've already been confirmed as the ones we're living in. So the primary timeline is the one that we as mortals live in. All of the other timelines isn't there, right? All of the other timelines, they're just fractured timelines. The Void Lords seeing 1,000 different truths, that's just the different timelines. They see all of the timelines as all being true at the same time, right? The light, similar to the Titans, sees only one timeline and believes that only that timeline is true. And what they try to do is they try to change every other timeline to that timeline. For the Titans, the different timelines is meant to create control. So why do they say
Uncounted eons, the Shadowlands was in perfect order?
Perfect order. Why is that important to the Shadowlands? This is death we're talking about. Surely death does not care about order. Not in the same way. Surely order shouldn't be that important to death. But anyways, let's keep watching.
Infinite afterlives, with Oribos, the eternal city, as the shining heart.
As I said, I genuinely believe that Oribos is well, we have the evidence for it. It's been confirmed by Steve Denuser that Oribos was built by the Titans. Oribos is a Titan city. So that sort of immediately proves it there. And just in case people were wondering, Steve Denuser also in an interview said, if you look at how quickly things started to unravel in the Shadowlands after the drought began, you do have to ask yourself, was it ever that healthy to begin with? That's legitimately Steve Denuser, the writer, the lead narrative designer of World of Warcraft, his own words. If you look at how quickly the Shadowlands unraveled after the drought began, you have to ask yourself, was it ever that healthy to begin with? No, it wasn't, because it was never built to be this. The thing that it became, that was not how it was meant to be. This is not, this Oribos is, as you could almost, you can put it as, it's the regulatory board of the Shadowlands. But it's impossible to maintain. Devos herself claims that she is following the jailer because he showed her what they did to themselves, how they've been lying to themselves. That's why she's following the jailer.
Every mortal soul came before the Arbiter, and she, ever wise, experienced...
I'm a little bit conflicted over this because she does appear to be not a construct in this image, right? This entire sort of, shall we say, 10 seconds, she doesn't appear to be a full construct. And I was convinced that she is. But at the same time, I do get this feeling like she's a program of some sort, right?
Every mortal soul came before the Arbiter, and she, ever wise, experienced all that had shaped a soul in life. With this knowledge, she consigned every soul to the afterlife it justly deserved. Until...
The afterlife it justly deserved. What even are you fucking talking about? We already know that we are servants in these afterlives. They place us there and we serve. So she placed us in the afterlife we justly deserved. In other words, just to serve even more. Alright, so here we get to the part that I think for most people is sort of confusing, right? I say most people, I'm confused by this as well. Before we can continue with this, before we can go any deeper with this, we have to decide on 3 things. And I'm going to put this to you and then you'll tell me if you're happy with it. The thing that broke the Arbiter can be one of 3 things. Number 1 could be Helya. The deal between Helya and Sylvanas. Something there. Either the lantern, but something there. It could be Xavius. Or it could be Argus. Are we in agreement that that's the only 3 things it can be? Or is there anyone else that that has some sort of other theory that they think it could be? The problem with making it Denathrius, right? The problem with making it Denathrius is it would take away any of the significance of the things that happen on Azeroth, and I don't think Blizzard would do that. It could be Gul'dan as well, but even there's some arguments about if it's like there is something weird about the Gul'dan story as well. But okay, let's include Gul'dan as well. We'll run through all of them. I want to make one thing clear. There is no way, ABK, you might want to swallow those words. It's definitely Argus. Never go with an absolute when it comes to speculation. There is no absolutes here. If I come out and I tell you it's definitely this, there is a higher than normal chance that I'm going to be definitely fucking wrong. The truth is, right? The truth is that we don't know. We have likely suspects. And so, there is only... No, he is literally not the Titan of Death. He is the Titan of Death based on Pyromancer's speculation. There's no legitimate source in World of Warcraft that makes him the Titan of Death. Like, there is no legitimate source of that. I want to make one thing clear. I love Pyromancer's speculations, by the way. I think Pyromancer did an amazing job on Argus, and I think he might be right with everything that he said about Argus. But if we look at Argus as a fucking character, Argus was 10 minutes of a 4-month patch. That's it. Argus was 10 minutes of a 4-month patch. The things we know about Argus is 0. Everything we know about Argus is based on speculation from YouTube speculators. Nothing wrong with that. But as for what we actually know about Argus as confirmed canonically, it is 0. We have him once talking to Illyria, right? Exclaiming that he is in pain and telling her what the Legion is doing to him. And we have one fight with him and one cinematic with him. So maybe let's say he's 20 minutes of a 4-month patch. That is Argus. The other problem that I have with Argus, and again, what I'm pointing out here is problems. I'm not saying that it isn't true. It might very well be Argus. I'm not saying it's not true. But as a speculator, the way I do my speculations is I come up with different possibilities, right? And then I start sort of playing devil's advocate with those possibilities, right? I literally just start playing, shall we say, I play devil's advocate. I say, right, could this be, why couldn't this, why couldn't that? And that's how we get to, I suppose we could say, the truth, even though there is no actual truth, right? Well, the game files, first and foremost, could have just been literally used as, oh, yeah, we'll call him that, we'll move on further. The people who write the lore for World of Warcraft are not also the people who do the game files for World of Warcraft, so need to point that out, right? There's a bunch of things that's got all sorts of crazy names, and those names get changed later on, right? And this has happened before, where things file name will change when it comes back. So you can't say, oh, but he was called this in the game files, therefore it must be true. Unless it's true, as in the people in the lore department of World of Warcraft wrote him as that, we can't say that, oh, that must confirm it. Because I'll also put this to you guys. There are actual voice lines and actual images within the game files of World of Warcraft that has never made it into World of Warcraft. It's never been added in World of Warcraft. It's nowhere to be found. You can't find it. It's not canonically true, even though it exists within the game files. Blizzard decided afterwards they're not going to use it because it's either going to destroy the story or it's going to paint them into a corner or whatever the case might be. But there is an establishment of this. But I'm not just using this as a way to tell you that it might not be Argus. I'll go even further and I'll say, okay, what if it is Argus? Let's argue that it is Argus. All right. So before we can do this, we need to decide, where does Argus come from? Which cosmological force is the force of Argus? Argus was born within Argus, the planet. That planet is in the great beyond. Now, we could argue that planet is actually in the twisting nether, but none of those two places is the Shadowlands. And so that would make Argus not a Titan of Death. That would make Argus about as much the Titan of Death as Yoursolosquad is the God of Death. Yoursolosquad says that he is the God of Death, and yet he has fuck all confirmed to do with the Shadowlands. So he is not the God of Death. However, it doesn't mean that he can't be the God of Death of the Void. Just like Argus could be the Titan of Death of Order. Now, here's where things get really freaky. Steve the Noozer was asked in an interview, where do the different servants of the cosmological forces go when they die? And Steve the Noozer confirmed, they go to their cosmological force. If you want to kill something that if you want to kill something, say a Void Lord, or you want to kill a Titan, you have to kill them inside their own realm. So you have to travel to the Twisting Nether. You have to travel to the Void. You have to travel to Order in order to kill them. Otherwise, killing them would simply send them back to their original home, to their original plane. So here's my problem. Let's imagine that Argus is a Titan of Order because he was born on Argus. Why would he then go to the Shadowlands? What natural purpose, what natural reason would there be for him to, upon his death, find his way to the Shadowlands, considering that he most likely died in or near the plane of order since we killed him on the Pantheon. And the Pantheon, according to Xalatath, isn't in the great beyond. Remember, Xalatath says when we get there, long have we sought entry into this realm, to think we have a mortal to thank for getting us here. So Xalatath confirms that the Pantheon does not lie inside the great beyond. It is in a different realm. So if the Pantheon is indeed in the realm of order, then Argus may in fact be fully dead, because we did kill him in his own realm, as per Steve Denuser, who is the lead narrative designer for World of Warcraft. Now, let's imagine that Argus isn't dead. He would still be in the realm of order. Why would he be in the Shadowlands? It makes no sense. Again, I'm not saying that it isn't true. I'm telling you, this is what Devil's Advocate is like. You must be able to find answers, legitimate answers, for every single one of these questions. Otherwise, it can't be that. Alright, so let's imagine that he is a Titan of Disorder, because he was in fact infused with Fel. This is what Sargeras did to him. So he is a Titan of Disorder. That means that upon his death, he would have returned to the Twisting Nether. Again, no viable reason for him to be in the Shadowlands. So let's finally argue that maybe he was a Titan of Death. In other words, he was born inside the Shadowlands, even though that makes no sense, because the Draenei, who is from Argus originally, they were not born inside the Shadowlands. That's not their original place. That's not where they're from. They're from the Great Beyond. They themselves have said that. And so there's a bunch of issues. But let's imagine that Argus is a Titan of Death. He is a Titan from the Shadowlands. Why would he then need to be in front of the Arbiter? Why would he need to go to the Arbiter to be placed? I mean, he is from that realm. He is part of that realm. Surely he does not need to be placed by the Arbiter. I mean, to me, that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't fit. So that's why I don't think that it is Argus. And I'm sure, I know Pyro probably immediately, as I saw the cinematic, I could see Pyro going, fuck, that's Argus, right? The problem, there is one extra problem with this, the timeline. We are told by Steve Denuser in an interview, and this was about 4.5 months ago, Steve Denuser said, right, Ysera was one of the last to get into the Shadowlands. One of the lost souls that got into the Shadowlands was Ysera. Now, we have a very good timeline provided by, what's his fucking name? Oh my god, names, bro. The bear. The fucking bear. What's his name? The name's completely blank. Ursoc. Thank you so much. Yes. We have a complete timeline now with Ursoc. Steve Denuser says Ysera is one of the last to get into the Shadowlands. We know that Ursoc went into the Shadowlands. And we know that shortly after Ursoc's arrival, the Shadowlands starts to break. Argus, I will have you know, doesn't die until about 1.5 years after Ursoc ends up in the Shadowlands. So that means that if it is Argus, then Ysera would not have been one of the last souls to enter into the Shadowlands. There would have been 1.5 years worth of souls still flooding into the Shadowlands before it finally went down. Before it finally started to break down. Right? So the argument that it could be Argus is a no. Many is one, according to at least established lore. 1 year is 1 year. So World of Warcraft keeps the timeline exactly the same as it is in normal in IRL. That's at least as it is described. Even I think it was Ian at BlizzCon when he spoke about a couple of years ago. It lines up because Ian Hesychostas of BlizzCon said, a couple of years ago, something happened that broke the Shadowlands. And that couple of years ago, if you go 2 years back, that puts it directly in line with either Ysera dying or Xavius dying. Every year in real life is a year in World of Warcraft, right? It literally keeps track with our timeline. I guess that's just to make it simple for Blizzard so that they know where the story is going. But okay, so that's neither here nor there. There's obviously things like time skips and things that interfere in that nature as well, so Blizzard could fuck that over. They could change the lore on that. Nothing stops them from doing that, but the timeline does not fit. If Argus is the one who broke the Shadowlands, then Blizzard will have to jump through a lot of hoops in order to explain the timeline. Now, before people go, yeah, but time works differently in the Shadowlands, let's be clear on this. It doesn't. I want to be very clear on this. There is now multiple interviews with Steve Denuser, Ian Hesychostas, as well as, I can't remember the other developer's name, all of them confirming time functions exactly the same in the Shadowlands as it does on Azeroth. 1 day in the Shadowlands is 1 day on Azeroth, with one big difference. The denizens of the Shadowlands does not care about time. Time is not a construct that they adhere to because they are eternal. And as I've used this in the past, think about us as humans. One of the reasons us as mortal human beings keep time, one of the reasons time is so important to us is we have a limited time to be here. Everything we do must happen in an extremely minute amount of time. This is why we're so afraid of failure. We're so afraid of taking risks, of taking chances. We get into a bad relationship with someone. We don't want to end the relationship because we don't want to feel like the last 2 years was a failure or a waste of time, because time is literally all we have, and it is so little of it before it's gone. But now imagine that eventually we solve all of our problems. We cure all diseases, including age. And so humans no longer die. The first thing we'll probably stop doing is calculating our time. We'll no longer care whether you're 10 years old or 100 or 500 years old. Because what does it matter? You're living forever anyways. So time is no longer important. This is exactly what happens within the Shadowlands. They are eternal. Therefore, time has no meaning to them. But it's not as if time doesn't happen there. It's just that time is a construct of order, not of death. And therefore, there is no time, so to speak, in the Shadowlands. But there is still, for us as mortals in the Shadowlands, time, because we are still only here for a minute amount of it. So in that sense, the timeline does not make a whole lot of sense. I could go as far as the events of Nighthold. If we go further than the events of Nighthold, I absolutely believe that we run into some very serious timing issues. Because after that, there's just too much time that's passed. In my opinion, this is most likely Xavius. That is my opinion. I do believe that it is Xavius. Now, for Xavius, there is not many good, shall we say, devil's advocate questions to ask and answer. My main reason for believing that it could be Xavius, the main reason why I think it could be Xavius, is because of where we killed him and because of the amount of corruption that Xavius had at the time of his death. Remember, Xavius turned into an actual fucking monster because of the amount of corruption that he had. And we killed Xavius somewhere inside the dream. If we listen to what the Natharazim said, that is a back door into the Shadowlands. So Xavius dying inside the back door of the Shadowlands would have meant that that corruption, that immense amount of corruption that the old gods had bestowed upon him, would be able to make its way to the one thing that the old gods want out of the way, and that is the Arbiter. Because if the Arbiter falls, everything the First One's made falls with her. This has been confirmed as well by denizens of Oribos. So Xavius fits in a way. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying it is Xavius. I'm saying it could be Xavius. Xavius would still fit because he is still a quote-unquote mortal from Azeroth, so his soul might go to the Shadowlands upon death, even though he was a demon because he was serving Sargeras, and he ended up serving the old god, so maybe he doesn't go to the Shadowlands. I could also argue Gul'dan. And with the Gul'dan thing, it actually becomes very interesting. If you think back to what Gul'dan did, what Gul'dan was, is there anyone here in chat right now that believes that Gul'dan served Sargeras loyally, absolutely, no questions asked? Anyone? Think about this. Gul'dan is sent through by Sargeras to Azeroth to defeat the Alliance and to prepare his coming. The first act Gul'dan undertakes is to undermine all of the plans of Sargeras and go about looking for power. The tomb. That's what he wanted. He wanted power. Because of his betrayal, because he left for the tomb, the Orcs lost, and so Sargeras' plans were foiled. So Gul'dan is the one guy who, he's always been in it for himself, but what if he isn't? What if Gul'dan has always been in it for Zuvul? What if Zuvul is the one that he served, and upon his death, he made the ultimate sacrifice to bring down the Arbiter? I'm not saying it's true. I want to make this very clear. I'm not claiming that this is the truth. I'm saying it could be, right? It could be. And the only reason I decided to make this, to talk about this, to discuss this topic, is be careful of coming to conclusions. I once heard this saying, I can't remember who said it, but conclusions closes the avenue to truth. And it's something that I actually very much believe with. It resonates with me. Be very careful of coming to conclusions, because conclusions really do close the avenue to truth. Once you've decided that it is something, you'll never be able to see what it could be or what it is, especially if you're wrong about what it is. Once you've reached that conclusion, there's no going back on it. I have just shown you, at least very preliminarily, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, that it could be 3 people, right? I've just shown you that it could potentially be 3 people. 3 people that you can't really argue with, right? I mean, if we now throw in Helya and Sylvanas, that gives us 4 people that could potentially have destroyed the Arbiter. And can you truly tell me that you have an actual piece of evidence that disqualifies one of the 4? Anyone in chat right now? Is there anyone that can give me actual evidence that would disqualify one of the 4 potential people that broke the Arbiter? I must admit, Hagar is as good as a disqualification as you'll ever get, because it could potentially be Hagar. I mean, Hagar is strong. Sylvanas would fit the timeline, but only because of Helya's death. So for Sylvanas to work, and I should probably just make this clear, it can't be Sargeras. That timeline again doesn't work. I've already explained it. Sargeras breaking it or Argus breaking it runs into the same timeline issue. It would be about 2 years after we're told it broke. After we see evidence of it breaking, Sargeras would be about 1.5 years too late, right, for it to have actually started to break. I mean, it's possible. It's just that would mean Blizzard went back on their own lore and back on what they said themselves, right? So just from a normal timeline thing, there's a problem with Sargeras and Argus being the ones who broke it. No, because Sylvanas throwing herself off the top of Icecrown Citadel again wouldn't fit the timeline. That would be far too early. So it seems like you guys are jumping from fucking way too late to way too early. There's a sweet spot, guys. The sweet spot is the moment Sylvanas made the deal with Helya and the lantern broke. Yeah, from that point up until I'd say you could maybe squeeze in the events of Nighthold, but I don't know if you can go past the events of Nighthold. Because again, that destroys the timeline. If you remember, we were told Ysera was one of the last souls that made it to the Shadowlands before the Arbiter went down. Ysera was one of the last. Ysera died at the beginning of the expansion. If you're now telling me that what Blizzard meant there is 2 years after Ysera's death is one of the last souls that went in there, I need to ask you, then what about all the people that fucking died in Legion? Because as far as I'm concerned, all of those, there's a rogue that literally died 1,000,000 times in Argus in my guild. I think that rogue was the last person to go into the Shadowlands before the fucking Shadowlands broke. So Ian clearly fucking lied. Because it was Ian at BlizzCon that said that Ysera was one of the last people to go into the Shadowlands. One of the last souls that made it into the Shadowlands before it died. So can you guys see why there is why that timeline is so strict? Chat, does it make sense to you why I make the timeline so strict? Or is there someone that thinks I might be wrong about that? Xavius is what I think. I think it's Xavius. When there's souls into the Shadowlands, who know how big a batch of souls is? But it wouldn't be a batch, because he didn't say she was one of the last batches that went in. She was one of the last souls that made it in. Time was different in the Shadowlands too? ABK, no. Didn't I fucking just discussed this. So, time is the same in Shadowlands. It's exactly the same as it is on Azeroth. Guys, I literally just spent 35 minutes talking. Did I talk to myself? Because my voice is not going to be happy about this. Was I talking to myself? No, you can't determine. You're right, Komik. You can't determine a timeline by that statement, but I wasn't just using that fucking statement, was I? I was using multiple statements and multiple in-game events to establish a timeline. The problem is what you guys want to do is you want to say the start of Shadowlands to whatever the fuck the end expansion of WoW is. That's the timeline. It could be anything in between that. I can't do that. We either agree there must be some kind of time limit to this, or we're just saying, you know what, Akalon, it could have been the start of WoW Classic. The Arbiter actually went down when we killed fucking Cthulhu. That's when the Arbiter died. I mean, we have to be able to decide that there is a timeline. The problem is, if you say from the beginning of Shadowlands to the end of Shadowlands, that is a massive timeline. Okay, who here says, who here believes that it is, the timeline is from the beginning of Shadowlands to the end of Shadowlands? Actually, fuck it. We will make a poll. Hold up. Bro poll, you motherfuckers. We'll get to the bottom of this one way or another. I'm doing a straw poll. Alright, I've got 4 options for you guys here. Xavius, Helya and Sylvanas, Gul'dan, Argus. Is there anyone else you want up on this list before I make this public and let you guys vote on it? Alright, people want Denathrius as well. Right, I'll put Denathrius here, even though I'm fucking convinced it's not Denathrius. I would rather take the answer Hogger than I would take the answer Denathrius. Let me just put it that way. But alright, I'll put Denathrius there, just in case. Did I spell Denathrius correctly? Fuck it. Spelling might be off on this. Lily, how you doing? No, I'm joking. I'm literally making jokes. I don't know who it is. I'm just asking questions. I'm creating the poll. And now you fuckers are going to vote in this poll. And you're going to let me know. Vote. Vote and let me fucking know. Alright, let's see it. Let's view the results. That's all I want to see. I want to see the results of this. I want to see how many of you believe the wrong thing. I've put the link there where you can vote. I'll also put this question on Twitter just in case there's people who maybe see it only later. All right, I'll tweet that out as well. Vote whatever you guys want. I'll go by your votes and we'll do a video on this as well. It's interesting to me how many of you guys agree with me. 42% of people think it might be Xavius. Only 26% think it's Argus. 33% of voters, or 23% of voters, think it's Helya and Sylvanas. I kind of like this. All right, go vote there, guys, and I'll keep an eye on that, and we'll probably do a video on this at some point. But for where I am now, I genuinely believe that it is a toss-up between Xavius and Sylvanas and Helya. In my opinion, it is between those two. And for Helya, the argument is actually rather simple. Once the lantern broke, Helya's connection, her anchor to Helheim, was broken. So once Helya got killed inside Helheim, remember, we were sent to kill Helya inside Helheim only to almost punish her. Odin was doing it as a way to punish her, as a way to torture her. Odin didn't know at that point that the thing that anchored her to Helheim was no longer in Helheim. So if she dies now, her soul no longer goes into the bowels of Helheim to be reborn. Oh no, now she goes to the Shadowlands. So that's why I believe it may be Helya. Because remember, guys, and I do want to fucking point this out. We came up the stairs, we saw Helya and Sylvanas standing there, and we heard Helya say, "Do not forget our deal, Banshee." And to this day, 2 expansions later, because that happened very early on in Legion, we still do not know what that fucking deal was. Now, I mean, we could dive into even more arguments here, right? We could absolutely dive into more arguments here where Odin may have done that on purpose. Remember, Odin did sacrifice his eye to Muazala. We know that Muazala is now working with Zuval. So it is entirely possible that Odin was told to kill Helya by Muazala. It might be that Odin wanted to bring down the Shadowlands himself, and that's why he sent us to kill Helya. There's a million different things here, right? At the end of the day, I don't know what the truth is of this, but at least that's my hate canon on it. Well, let's look at it, and you guys can tell me if you think this isn't a soul. In my opinion, this looks like a soul, but let's just quickly look at this.
Ew. In that dread moment, our perfect order was shattered. And so it is that every soul, kind and cruel alike.
It is a virus, right? It is a virus. Falling down. I can on the screech. Let's just quickly listen to it again. I'm not sure whose screech it is. Let's...
Until...
It starts earlier, doesn't it? It does stop before it even hits her. There's a scream that comes from this. Let's just quickly listen closely. Do you guys hear that? Alright, there we have the fucking soul. Hold up. I need to move my camera out of the way. Alright, there you have the soul. And it penetrates her. That scream is a bit fucking eerie, innit? This scream is really fucking eerie, though. There's a scream there. The Arbiter is not a construct or a program. It's, I think it's a living thing. It could be a living thing. But here's another reason why I think it might be Xavius. Look at what happens here.
In that dread moment,
I got almost, I got vibes of this. So I got similar vibes from this. It digging itself in and sort of taking over the entire body. I just got similar vibes while I was looking at this. I mean, maybe it is just me. I mean, that's the point of confirmation bias, which is the problem with speculation, by the way. We all suffer from it. Almost everyone is going to come up with a speculation theory, but the problem is you've already decided in your mind what it might be and what it might not be. And so you're going to look for the things that proves that you are correct. You're not necessarily going to look for the truth. And that's something I do myself as well, which is why I have an entire law council that sort of keeps me on my fucking toes with my theories, so that they can tell me when they think I'm completely fucking wrong about whatever I believe. Because otherwise I would just speculate around my own asshole, right? Which is not why you guys come here. So I get similar vibes from this. Just watch this again and then tell me if you get the same vibes. Even if you don't agree, just tell me if you get the same vibes. That screech, by the way, was very similar. Did you hear that screech? Alright, now that you see that, let's just go back to...
until...
The color to me is nightmarish, right? That red color is nightmare. It's the same color as the bolt from Xavius, right? It's the same red. It's that nightmarish color that we all sort of associate with the nightmare immediately, and we know that color is an insane concept within Blizzard. They use color a lot. So color coordination is very important for Blizzard on almost all levels.
In that dread moment, our perfect order was shattered. And so it is that every soul, kind and cruel alike, is denied its rightful afterlife, and instead is damned to the inescapable torment of the Maw.
That dread moment. look, it makes sense to me on a, shall we say, from a unified position or from a uniformal position. I love the idea of it being Argus, because Argus is obviously called the Unmaker. And as we already know, and this is why I told you guys I don't disagree with anything. I just ask I ask questions around these sorts of topics. But I love the idea of it being Argus, because he is called the Unmaker. And we have the denizens of Oribos saying very clearly, right, that if the jailer strikes down the Arbiter, he will unmake everything the first ones made. So, if you are the Unmaker, and you want to unmake the universe, unmaking the Arbiter is the way to do that, right? So, personally, I have no problem with that.